What does it cost to remain loyal when the galaxy itself seems to demand your damnation? The first blow does not come from an enemy blade, it comes from silence. A battlefield holds its breath as Captain Titus stands alone amid the wreckage of a world being devoured. Smoke coils like dying spirits, steel burns. Somewhere beyond the haze, something ancient and patient watches him, not with eyes but with intent. Titus feels it before he sees it, a pressure against his soul, testing, measuring, waiting for him to break. He does not. Titus has never been a man of hesitation. From the moment he was reforged into something more than human, duty became his pulse. Not the hollow kind spoken of in oaths, but the kind carved into bone. Orders are simple. Protect the Imperium, hold the line, do not fall. Yet standing here, surrounded by the aftermath of slaughter, he understands that duty is not always clean. Sometimes it is a stain that never washes away. The enemy comes screaming out of the ash, twisted shapes wearing the mockery of once human forms. Titus moves before thought can catch up. Bolt rounds tear through the air, detonating bodies in bursts of fire and blood. Each shot is precise, each kill necessary. He advances like a storm given purpose, the ground trembling beneath ceramite boots. This is what he was made for. This is what the galaxy understands. But then something goes wrong. The air itself fractures. A wound opens in reality, spilling light that should not exist. Power floods the battlefield, raw and invasive, pressing into Titus's mind. Lesser men would fall screaming. Even his brothers would stagger, faith wavering beneath the weight of it. Titus feels the pressure and keeps walking. He should not be able to do this. He knows it. Somewhere deep within his training, a warning screams. This is wrong. This is impossible. Yet the power recoils from him, as if uncertain. For a heartbeat, Titus and the warp stare at each other, and the galaxy tilts. When the fighting ends, there are no cheers, only whispers. Titus does not hear them at first. He is too busy counting the living, marking the dead, sealing wounds with efficiency born of centuries. But whispers travel faster than truth. They slip between vox channels and linger behind helmets. Questions without voices, doubts without proof. Why did he not fall? Why did the warp not claim him? Why is he still standing? Duty demands answers, and the Imperium is merciless in its hunger for certainty. Titus is summoned not as a hero, but as a problem. The halls he walks now are not filled with fire and noise, but with cold light and colder judgment. Chains are prepared long before accusations are spoken. Faith, he learns, is fragile when confronted with the unexplained. He does not resist. Bound in adamantium restraints, Titus stands before those who once trusted him with worlds. Their eyes search him for corruption, for the smallest crack in loyalty. He meets their gaze without defiance. He has nothing to hide. He followed orders. He held the line. If that is not enough, then nothing ever was. Interrogation strips away time. Pain becomes routine. Silence becomes heavier than any blow. They ask him what he felt when the warp touched him. He tells them the truth. He felt nothing he did not master. That answer frightens them more than any confession. In the dark, Titus reflects on the irony. He has faced monsters that eat suns, warlords who drown systems in blood, horrors that claw at reality itself. None of them felt as distant as this. None of them cut as deep. The Imperium he bled for now weighs his existence like a potential contagion. Still, he does not curse it. Because duty is not about reward, time loses meaning. Eventually the chains are removed, not in absolution, but in necessity. The war does not pause for doubt. Titus is sent back into the void, not as a symbol, but as a weapon too useful to discard. He marches again into hell. Each battle another mark against his name, each victory another unanswered question. On shattered worlds, his legend grows warped and fractured. Some say he is blessed, others whisper that he is cursed. Titus ignores them all. He fights with the same cold focus, the same relentless advance. If the galaxy fears him, so be it. Fear still kills enemies. Yet, in quiet moments between deployments, something gnaws at him. Not doubt, but awareness. The sense that he is being shaped by forces beyond simple war. That his survival has drawn attention. Not from gods or demons, but from something far more dangerous. Expectation. He dreams rarely, but when he does, he sees that moment again, the warp recoiling uncertain. He wonders why. Not out of fear for himself, but out of fear for what it might mean. The Imperium does not forgive anomalies, it weaponizes them, or erases them. On the next battlefield, the enemy adapts. They do not charge. They observe. They test him with traps layered in sorcery and steel. Each time, Titus breaks through, not untouched, but unyielding. His brothers follow him with fierce loyalty, yet even they watch him differently now. Admiration tinged with unease. During one brutal engagement, as artillery turns the horizon into fire, Titus feels it again. That pressure, that invisible hand reaching for him. This time, it lingers. He grits his teeth and pushes forward, blade roaring, refusing to acknowledge it. The enemy falls back, screaming in rage not at defeat, but at denial. Afterward, standing amid the ruin, Titus looks at his gauntlets slick with oil and blood. He wonders if duty alone can still define him, or if the galaxy has already decided he is something else. A transmission arrives, sealed and encoded beyond standard clearance. Orders without explanation. A summons that does not come from the battlefield, but from the shadows behind command. He reads it once. Then again. The words are precise. Final. Prepare for reassignment. Status under review. Titus closes his fist, crumpling the data slate. Around him the war continues, oblivious. He lifts his gaze to the stars, knowing that whatever waits will not be another enemy to gun down. It will be a reckoning, not of his actions, but of his existence. And somewhere, in the dark between worlds, something stirs, aware that Captain Titus is finally being called to account. The question is not whether he will survive it. The question is what the Imperium will become if he does. The summons does not arrive with ceremony. It comes as a course correction, a silent shift in trajectory that pulls Titus's strike cruiser away from the warfront like a blade withdrawn mid-swing. Stars smear into pale wounds across the viewing port as the ship enters the warp, and for the first time in centuries, Titus feels the faint, unwelcome sensation of being carried rather than advancing. He stands alone on the command deck, hands clasped behind his back, listening to the ship groan as reality bends around it. Every vibration is familiar, comforting even. War has always spoken to him in this language, but this journey feels different. There is no enemy to anticipate, no tactical puzzle to solve. Only judgment, moving toward him at the speed of light. The destination is never spoken aloud. It does not need to be. When the warp releases them, the stars are wrong. Too orderly, too still. A fortress hangs in the void like a clenched fist, its spires bristling with weapons that have never known rust. Titus recognizes the architecture instantly, not from memory, but from instinct. Places like this exist outside campaigns and crusades. They exist to decide who is allowed to continue existing. His escort greets him in silence. Their armor bears no chapter markings, only sigils of authority so old they feel carved into the universe itself. They do not salute. They do not speak his name. To them, he is not Captain Titus. He is an object under examination. Inside, the air is cold and thin, stripped of any trace of incense or ritual warmth. The corridors are too clean, the lighting too even. Nothing here inspires faith. It demands compliance. Titus walks without restraint, yet every step echoes with the weight of unspoken accusation. They bring him to a chamber shaped like an amphitheater, its walls rising into shadow. Figures wait there, robed and armored, faces hidden behind masks of office. Their presence presses against him harder than any psychic assault he has endured. These are not warriors, they are verdicts given form. They begin without preamble. They speak of the battlefield where the warp recoiled, of the testimonies recorded by trembling scribes and hardened veterans alike, of statistical impossibilities and doctrinal violations. Each word is measured, surgical. They are not here to be convinced. They are here to observe how he reacts. Titus listens. When they ask him why he believes he survived, he answers simply, he does not know. That answer ripples through the chamber like a dropped blade. Uncertainty is tolerated in soldiers, not in symbols. They press him harder, circling the question from different angles. Did he feel temptation? Did he hear whispers? Did he bargain, even unknowingly? No, he says, again and again. Eventually, they change tactics. They show him records, fragmented images pulled from forbidden archives. Warriors throughout history who displayed similar resistance. Each one ended the same way: execution, disappearance, quiet erasure. The implication is clear. Survival is not precedent. It is a delay. For the first time, Titus speaks without being asked. If I am a threat, he says, his voice steady, then end me. If I am a weapon, then point me. But do not pretend this is about certainty. You fear what you cannot categorize. Silence follows, heavy, evaluative. They do not kill him. Instead, they offer him a choice that is not a choice at all. Service, stripped of identity, no banners, no chapter, no recognition. A blade in the dark, wielded by hands that will never claim responsibility for his actions. Refusal would mean confinement at best, erasure at worst. Titus accepts. Not because he agrees, but because the war still rages. Because worlds still burn. Because duty, once etched into the soul, does not loosen its grip simply because it is questioned. They take his armor. Not all of it. Just enough to remind him that nothing is permanent. He is given new war gear, unadorned, its surface matte and anonymous. When he looks at his reflection, he barely recognizes the figure staring back. The colors are wrong, the heraldry absent. It is like looking at a ghost of himself. His first assignment comes immediately, a world lost to silence. No distress calls, no warp storms, just absence. Entire regiments vanished between transmissions. Titus is deployed with a small kill team, each warrior as carefully selected as he was. None of them ask who he used to be, none of them care. Here, names are liabilities. The planet greets them with stillness. Cities stand intact, lights flickering, doors open. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just emptiness so complete it feels curated. Titus moves through streets that should be choked with refugees, his footsteps echoing like a violation. As they advance toward the planetary core, the pressure returns. Subtle at first, a tightening behind the eyes, a sense of being watched by something vast and amused. The others feel it too. He can hear it in their breathing, in the way their weapons track shadows that do not move. Then, the truth reveals itself in fragments. They find a cathedral hollowed out from within, its altar split by something that clawed its way into reality. Symbols etched into the stone are wrong, not chaotic but precise, deliberate. This was not an invasion. It was an invitation. When the enemy finally emerges, it does not charge. It speaks, not aloud, but directly into the mind. Promises, tailored with unsettling intimacy. To the others, it offers power. To Titus, it offers understanding, an explanation for his resistance, a name for what he is. He roars and advances, severing the connection with violence. The fight that follows is brutal and desperate, each kill won at terrible cost. When it ends, only Titus remains standing, surrounded by the dead, both enemy and ally. He does not feel triumph. He feels confirmation. As extraction arrives, Titus kneels among the fallen, something heavy settling into his chest. This is not coincidence. He is not an anomaly. He is a response. The galaxy is changing, and whatever rules once governed survival are no longer sufficient. Back aboard the ship, as medici servitors work in silence, Titus stares at his gauntlets once more. Not at the blood this time, but at the faint scorch marks left by energies that should have consumed him. For the first time, he allows himself a forbidden thought. What if duty alone is no longer enough? What if the Imperium does not need him to obey, but to endure something it cannot? The ship turns toward its next destination, deeper into shadows where maps grow thin and authority blurs. Titus rises, armor locking into place, and steps forward without waiting for orders. Whatever he is becoming, it will not be shaped by fear. And somewhere ahead, something ancient adjusts its gaze, realizing that Captain Titus is no longer merely surviving the war. He is being prepared. Preparation comes disguised as routine. The missions blur together at first. Silent insertions, exterminations conducted without witnesses, recoveries of truths never meant to surface. Titus becomes efficient in a way that unsettles even him. Without banners or brothers who remember his past, he is reduced to motion and intent. Drop, advance, kill, withdraw. Between those moments, there is nothing, or so he tells himself. But the pressure follows. Not always as force, sometimes as familiarity. As if the darkness he cuts through is learning his shape. On a dead moon orbiting a collapsed star, Titus pauses mid-stride. The ground beneath his boots is glassed stone, fused smooth by ancient heat. The sky above is a frozen smear of violet, unmoving. His squad fans out ahead of him, weapons raised, their silhouettes stark against the glow. Everything is correct. Everything is wrong. He realizes then that he has stopped listening to their vox chatter. Not because it has gone silent, but because something else has taken its place. A rhythm, slow, patient, almost respectful. He shakes his head and advances, refusing to give it space. The objective lies beneath the surface, a vault carved before humanity learned to fear what it might find. Inside waits a relic pulsing with restrained potential, surrounded by corpses that never decayed. The squad moves in practiced synchronization, charges set, firing lines established. The relic reacts when Titus steps closer. It does not flare. It dims, like an eye narrowing. Images flash through his mind, battlefields he remembers and others he does not. Worlds where the sky burns green, warriors standing where he stands now, resisting the same pull, making the same choices. None of them are named, none of them are remembered. The Imperium buried them along with the knowledge of why they mattered. The realization strikes him harder than any blow. He is not unique. He is a recurrence. The vault collapses under controlled detonation, and the relic is gone, erased with surgical thoroughness. On the surface, the squad regroups. One of them falters, helm tilting toward Titus, a pause too long to be coincidence. "You felt it too," the warrior says quietly. Titus meets his gaze. He does not deny it. That warrior dies 3 missions later, consumed by something that wears his voice while it kills him. Titus executes the thing without hesitation, but the words linger like shrapnel. You felt it too. The tempo of assignments changes. Longer deployments, less oversight, more autonomy than any operative should be trusted with. It is not freedom, it is distance. Titus understands the implication even if no one speaks it aloud. If he falls, there will be no retrieval, no investigation, just silence closing over his last position. On a world of endless rain where cities sag under the weight of centuries, the twist finally reveals itself. The enemy does not attack. They wait. Titus walks through a manufacturum district abandoned mid-shift, machines still humming without purpose. The rain coats his armor in reflective sheen, turning him into a moving shadow. His auspex registers life signs ahead, steady, disciplined, not cultists, not demons, Astartes. They emerge from the downpour like statues brought to life, armor bearing marks that should not exist anymore. Heraldry scraped away, replaced with sigils Titus has only seen in censored fragments. Their leader lowers his weapon first. "You took longer than expected," the warrior says. Titus does not raise his gun. Recognition settles uneasily. These are not traitors, not in the way the Imperium defines it. Their movements are too controlled, their discipline intact. Their eyes, visible through cracked lenses, are clear. They speak of a pattern, of warriors like Titus, tested by the warp and found resistant. Not immune, resistant. Enough to survive where others break, enough to be noticed by forces that do not waste attention. They were not recruited, they explain. They were gathered. Slowly. Quietly. After each proved impossible to discard. "You think you're being used," the leader says, rain streaking down his helm. "You are. But not only by those who sent you." The rain intensifies, drumming against metal like distant artillery. Titus feels the pressure again, stronger now, resonant. The rhythm he heard before aligns with his heartbeat. The enemy presence is near, but it is not hostile. It is observant. The truth unfolds in pieces. The resistance is not a shield. It is a threshold. Something ancient exists between extremes, between the warp's hunger and the Imperium's denial. It does not grant power freely. It tests, presses, waits to see who bends and who adapts without surrender. Those who do are not spared. They are shaped. Titus feels anger then. Not at the revelation, but at the implication. That his loyalty, his suffering, his isolation were variables in an experiment no one ever explained. A choice presents itself, unspoken but clear. Continue as a blade wielded blindly, or step into a role that has no name and no absolution. The enemy attacks before he can answer. Reality tears open across the district, structures folding inward as something vast forces itself through. The gathered warriors move as one, forming a defensive line that should not exist. Titus fights alongside them, each strike amplified by a clarity he has never known. The pressure does not resist him now. It aligns. For a moment, a dangerous, intoxicating moment, everything makes sense. They drive the entity back into the tear, sealing it with coordinated precision that borders on ritual. When it is over, the city is ruined, but the rain has stopped. Steam rises from broken stone, carrying the scent of ozone and blood. The warriors look to Titus, waiting, not for orders, for decision. He understands then that the Imperium's greatest fear was never corruption. It was evolution it could not control. The tools meant to suppress the warp had begun to interact with it in unintended ways. Titus is not an aberration. He is evidence. He turns away from them, not in refusal, but in resolve. There will be no easy alignment, no secret brotherhood that replaces one chain with another. If he is to stand at this threshold, it will be on his terms. He will not serve the warp. He will not betray the Imperium. He will walk the space between and let both sides choke on the uncertainty. As his ship lifts off through clearing skies, Titus watches the ruined city shrink beneath him. The pressure remains, steady and present, no longer probing, waiting. For the first time since the summons, Titus allows himself to ask the question he has avoided. If the war is changing, what happens when the Imperium realizes he has changed with it? The stars stretch ahead, silent and complicit. And somewhere beyond them, a reckoning accelerates toward him, no longer as judgment, but as inevitability. The waiting ends quietly. No alarms, no abrupt course change. Just a subtle tightening in the air aboard the ship, as if space itself has drawn closer. Titus feels it before any sensor registers anomaly. The pressure that once lingered at the edge of awareness now settles fully into his chest, heavy but controlled, like a hand resting there. Not gripping yet, but ready. The crew avoids his gaze. Not out of fear, out of instinct. Something about him has shifted, and they sense it the way animals sense an approaching storm long before the first thunder. The message arrives without encryption, a single vector, a single directive. Attend. Titus does not ask who sent it. He knows. Authority that no longer hides behind intermediaries has finally chosen to step into the open. Not to confront him publicly, not yet. To measure him one last time. The destination lies near a scar in real space, where the warp once bled through so violently that even now, stars bend away from it. The ship slows as it approaches, engines humming with restrained unease. The void ahead is crowded, not with fleets, but with absence. A dead zone where augurs struggle to return coherent data, where sound seems to die before it can echo. Titus orders the ship to hold position. He goes alone. A boarding torpedo carries him across the final distance, metal screaming as it cuts into the hull of an ancient structure hidden within the void's distortion. The impact reverberates through his bones. When the hatch blows, cold darkness rushes in, carrying with it a familiar pressure, stronger now, layered with something else. Expectation. The interior is vast and cathedral-like, but stripped of devotion. No icons, no candles, just architecture designed to dwarf those who walk within it. Titus advances through corridors that subtly realign themselves as he passes, guiding him without signage, without force. He reaches a chamber at the heart of the structure, circular and open to the stars beyond a fractured dome. Figures wait there, few but immense in presence. Not robed bureaucrats, not masked judges. Astartes, older than him. He can tell by the wear in their armor, by the way time seems to cling to them. Their heraldry is intact, unashamed, bearing symbols from a purer age. They do not level weapons. They stand at rest, confident in a way that has nothing to prove. One steps forward. "You have reached the point where denial no longer serves," the warrior says. His voice is calm, carrying no threat. "That alone sets you apart." Titus does not kneel. "I didn't come to be enlightened," he replies. "I came because you wouldn't stop watching." A flicker of something like approval passes through the others. They speak then, not all at once, not in unison. They tell him what the Imperium refuses to document. That long ago, before doctrine hardened into dogma, there were contingencies, fail-safes, not against enemies, but against inevitability. The warp could not be destroyed. Neither could humanity abandon it. So alternatives were tested. Titus listens as fragments align. Resistance, thresholds. Survivors quietly removed from history not because they failed, but because they succeeded in ways that frightened those in power. "You think you're walking a line," one of them says. "You're not. You're standing at a crossroads humanity has reached before and always turned away from." The pressure surges, filling the chamber like an invisible tide. For the first time, Titus feels its full weight, not invasive, not seductive, but immense. It does not ask him to submit, it asks him to choose direction. He sees flashes again, possible futures branching outward. In some, the Imperium doubles down on control, purging anomalies until nothing remains but brittle certainty. In others, the warp runs unchecked, consuming everything in its hunger for sensation and belief. Both end the same way: extinction. The figures before him offer no salvation, only responsibility. "You cannot stop what's coming," the leader says, "but you can decide how humanity meets it." Silence stretches between them. Titus feels the enormity of the moment pressing in from all sides. This is not a battlefield decision. There is no clear enemy, no clean victory, only consequences that will ripple outward long after his name is forgotten. He thinks of the worlds he has saved, of the brothers who trusted him, of the Imperium that raised him, broke him, and still demands his obedience. "I won't replace one tyranny with another," he says at last. "If this path exists, it won't be hidden behind lies." A faint tremor runs through the structure, as if something far away has noticed the conversation. The leader nods slowly. "Then you will be opposed," he says, "by those you once served, by those who think they serve humanity better than you ever could." Titus turns toward the fractured dome. Beyond it, the stars seem to pulse, distant points of light trembling as if under strain. He feels it now clearly, the warp reacting not with aggression but with interest. Forces moving, decisions cascading. A warning signal flares across his armor's display. Multiple fleet signatures translating from the Imperium. Imperial. Too many. Too deliberate. Titus does not move. Not yet. He watches as the first distant flashes of emergence light the void like silent explosions. He understands the timing instantly. This meeting was never meant to remain secret. Someone ensured it wouldn't. Behind him, the ancient warriors ready themselves, not hurried, not afraid, prepared. Titus exhales slowly, centering himself as the pressure tightens once more, no longer passive. The next choice will not be philosophical, it will be violent. And as the first Imperial vessels complete their translation, weapons powering up in unmistakable formation, Titus realizes with absolute clarity that whatever he does next will redefine not just his fate, but the meaning of loyalty itself. The void ignites. Imperial vessels bloom out of the warp in disciplined formation, their silhouettes sharp and unmistakable. Battle cruisers, strike escorts, hunter-killer squadrons fanning outward with clinical precision, no hails, no demands. Their intent is written in the alignment of their prows and the glow of charging lance batteries. This is not an arrest. It is a purge. The ancient structure trembles as if it understands what approaches. Dust falls from the fractured dome in slow spirals, drifting between Titus and the warriors behind him. For a heartbeat, no one moves. The silence stretches, taut enough to snap. Titus feels it then. Not pressure, not observation, fear, not his own, the Imperium's. They did not come for negotiation. They came because whatever stands here threatens the story they tell themselves about control, about purity, about obedience as salvation. Weapons power up across the void, targeting a Ray's lock. The first lance strike tears through the darkness, a spear of white annihilation aimed not at the structure, but at the space around it. A warning shot, a declaration. The ancient warriors move as one. No shouted orders, no gestures, just motion, practiced and inevitable. Defensive fields bloom into existence around the structure, bending the lance's path just enough that it shears past, carving a molten scar through the fractured dome and spilling starlight across the chamber. Titus does not flinch. He steps forward. The pressure surges, no longer testing, no longer waiting. It pours through him like a tide finding an open shore. Not overwhelming, aligning. He feels every boundary of himself remain intact even as something vast settles into place around them. He understands now. This was never about resisting the warp, it was about refusing to disappear inside it. The Imperial fleet advances. Thunder rolls through the void as macro cannons fire in unison. Void shields flare. Space becomes violence made visible. The ancient structure shudders under the impact, but holds, barely. Titus opens a channel. not to the fleet, to the Imperium itself. His voice cuts through encrypted layers, command hierarchies, doctrinal firewalls. It rides the pressure that now answers him, not as corruption, but as amplification. "I am Captain Titus," he says, calm and unyielding. "You sent me to fight what you feared to understand. I did. I survived. And now you are afraid of what that means." There is no response. Of course there isn't. Truth is not what they came for. The first boarding torpedoes launch, streaking toward the structure like burning accusations. Defensive fire erupts from hidden emplacements, shredding several mid-flight. Others make it through. Impact. The chamber rocks violently. Alarms howl through ancient halls long dormant. Titus turns as breach teams force their way inside, Astartes in familiar colors, weapons raised, faces hidden behind the same creeds he once shared. For a moment, time slows. He recognizes their movements, their formation, their discipline. They are him, or what he was. They hesitate when they see him, just for a fraction of a second. It is enough. Titus advances, not charging, not roaring, walking. Bolter fire erupts, deafening and brutal. Rounds slam into his armor, detonating in bursts of flame and force. He absorbs the impact, pain flaring bright and sharp, grounding him. He returns fire with lethal restraint, shots placed to disable, to stagger, to force space rather than annihilate. "Stand down," he commands. "This is not heresy, this is survival." Some falter. Others do not. The fight becomes close, personal. Blades clash, sparks spraying like dying stars. Titus moves through them with terrible clarity, each strike precise, each parry economical. He does not hate them. That makes it harder. Behind him, the ancient warriors engage with devastating efficiency, holding the line against overwhelming numbers. They fight not to win, but to buy time. Above, the void battle escalates toward catastrophe. Imperial ships press closer, risking collision to bring heavier weapons to bear. The structure's shields begin to fail, sections flickering under sustained assault. The pressure shifts. Urgency replaces observation. The warp does not push Titus forward now. It pulls toward a point beyond the structure, beyond the fleets, beyond the immediate violence, towards something vast that is waking because of this moment. He feels the truth crystallize. This confrontation was inevitable, but the outcome is not. Titus reaches the heart of the chamber once more, blood and ash coating his armor. The leader of the ancient warriors stands wounded nearby, helm cracked, breathing labored. "This is where it breaks," the warrior says, "one way or another." Titus looks out through the shattered dome. Imperial ships burn now, some torn apart by forces they do not understand, as the structure's deeper systems awaken. But more arrive with every passing second. Too many. He closes his eyes. For the first time since his rebirth, he does not think as a soldier. He thinks as a man. He thinks of duty not as obedience, but as responsibility for consequences. Of loyalty, not as submission, but as refusal to abandon humanity to its own fear. He opens himself, not to the warp's hunger, but to its immensity. He does not command it. He does not surrender. He stands. The pressure crests. Reality bends, not violently, elegantly. A wave rolls outward from the structure, invisible yet absolute. Warp energy and real space harmonize for a single impossible moment. Imperial targeting systems fail. Vox channels dissolve into static. Navigators scream as the Immaterium goes eerily still. The fleets are not destroyed. They are displaced, shunted aside, scattered across light minutes of void, intact but stunned, ripped from formation without warning or explanation. Silence follows, deep, total. Titus drops to one knee, breath tearing from his lungs. Pain floods in now, delayed and merciless. His armor is cracked, systems failing, warning runes cascading across his vision, but the structure still stands. The ancient warriors look at him not with reverence, but with recognition. He did not choose power, he chose restraint. Slowly, the pressure recedes, not gone, but settled. The warp withdraws its attention, satisfied, for now. Titus rises unsteadily. Outside, the stars begin to drift back into familiar patterns. The immediate threat has passed, but the truth cannot be undone. The Imperium will regroup. It always does. And when it returns, it will come with new doctrines, new weapons, new lies to justify what it must do next. Titus knows this. And for the first time, he is not alone in knowing it. He looks out at the void, battered, changed, still standing. The storm has broken. What comes after will shape everything. And as the structure's ancient systems power down, the galaxy exhales, unaware that it has just crossed a threshold it can never retreat from. Silence settles slowly, like ash after a great fire, not the fragile silence of something broken, but the heavy calm that follows survival. The structure drifts where it always has, ancient and patient, its purpose fulfilled for now. The stars resume their distant burn, indifferent, eternal. Around them, scattered Imperial vessels struggle to regroup, systems rebooting, crews trying to understand how certainty slipped through their fingers without a single decisive blow. Titus stands at the edge of the fractured dome, watching the void breathe again. Pain remains. It always will. His armor is scarred beyond easy repair. Its surface a record of choices made when there was no clean path forward. But beneath it, beneath the gene-forged strength and the scars that will never fade, he feels something unfamiliar. Relief. Not because he won, because he chose. Behind him, the ancient warriors move quietly, tending to the wounded, sealing breaches, restoring what can be restored. There is no celebration among them, no triumph. They understand what this moment truly means. Survival has been secured, not peace. Time has been bought, not resolution. One by one they begin to depart. Some return to hidden watchposts scattered across forgotten systems. Others vanish into the deep void, guardians without monuments, names already half erased by history. No vows are exchanged, no promises made. They were never meant to last, only to endure long enough for someone like Titus to arrive. The leader approaches him one final time, moving with visible effort now, age and damage finally asserting themselves. He does not salute. "You have given them a future they will deny exists," he says quietly. "That may be the hardest gift of all." Titus nods once. "What happens now?" he asks. The warrior looks past him, toward the stars. "What always happens, they will hunt explanations. They will invent reasons. They will tighten their grip until their hands shake. And humanity?" A pause. "Humanity survives," the warrior says. "Not because it is pure, not because it is righteous, but because there are still those willing to stand in the space between fear and faith." With that he turns away, his footsteps echoing softly until they fade into nothing. Titus is alone again, but not isolated. He returns to his ship without ceremony. The crew does not speak when he enters. They simply watch him pass, something unspoken shifting behind their eyes. They saw the fleet scatter. They felt the moment the universe seemed to hesitate. They do not ask what he did. They know better now. The ship pulls away from the structure, engines burning steady and true. As distance grows, the ancient silhouette fades back into distortion, then into myth. Soon, no chart will mark it. No record will admit it ever existed. That is how the Imperium prefers its truths. In the quiet of the command deck, Titus removes his helm. The air feels different on his skin, cooler somehow, as if the universe itself has loosened its grip just enough for him to breathe. He thinks back to the battlefield where it all began. To the moment the warp pressed against him and found no purchase, he understands now why that moment mattered. It was not strength. It was refusal. Refusal to surrender his will. Refusal to become a symbol owned by forces too vast to care for the lives beneath them. Refusal to let duty become an excuse to stop thinking, stop choosing, stop bearing the weight of consequence. Duty, he realizes, was never about obedience. It was about standing when standing costs everything. The Imperium will brand him many things in the years to come. Asset, liability, heretic, savior. His name will be spoken in whispers, then redacted, then misattributed to someone easier to control. Perhaps one day, even the memory of Captain Titus will fade. He accepts that. Legends are not meant to be comfortable. The ship charts a new course, not toward war zones blazing on strategic maps, but toward places unmarked. Places where threats grow quietly, where intervention does not come with banners or praise, where survival depends on decisions made without witnesses. Titus remains what he has always been, a warrior. But now he is also something else, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons or its gods, but its capacity to choose restraint over annihilation, understanding over denial, responsibility over fear. As the stars stretch ahead, endless and unresolved, Titus allows himself one final thought. Not as a command, not as a doctrine, but as a question that will echo long after he is gone. What is loyalty worth if it demands blindness? And if duty binds us to the future, who decides what that future is allowed to become? The ship vanishes into the void, its wake dissolving into starlight. The galaxy moves on, but somewhere, deep within the endless war, a different path now exists. Quiet, fragile, and undeniably human. And that may be enough.